All right. Welcome, everybody, to Willow Legal Group's Coffee Chat. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, we are here today with Kim Oser. She is a certified professional organizer and productivity consultant, and she is the founder of Game Plan Organizing. Kim takes the chaos out of everyday life and transforms it into calm, productive harmony. As the founder of Game Plan Organizing, she's been helping overwhelmed individuals and small businesses for over 20 years now. As one of the world's first certified professional organizers, hold on. Kim understands how disorganization creates unnecessary stress. Kim has extensive experience working with seniors and their families, helping them organize crucial documents, simplify complex paperwork, and create accessible systems for daily living. She offers compassionate guidance during downsizing, healthcare transitions, and estate organization, ensuring peace of mind for everyone involved. Kim's passionate about helping her clients reduce stress through approachable productivity systems. And when working with Kim, you're creating more time, space, and money in your life. Whether your desk is drowning in papers or your life needs decluttering, Kim offers friendly guidance to move forward or move from overwhelmed to overjoyed. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, guys.
So tell us a little bit about how you typically work with adult children and their parents as they're thinking about downsizing. I talk to a lot of clients that are in that position. Either they're moving their parents or trying to talk to their parents about moving. How do you approach downsizing for that group?
Sure. So every situation is a little bit unique, but I think the thing that we have in common is that if we're lucky enough to have our parents around in advanced age, which I'd probably get smacked by my parents by calling them that, or my mom she'd be like, who are you talking about? That's certainly not us. Despite the fact that they're 82 years old. But I think the thing that to relate to is that, you're not alone and you don't have to go through this alone with your parents, and that there's lots of resources out there and there's ways to handle it with kindness. And I think one of the biggest challenges that people have is that the parents think that the kids are going to stick them in a home and no one's going to visit them and they're going to be all alone. And what they're afraid of is they're losing their independence. And they're also admitting that they need help, which I know is difficult for us at this age. But if that's the only thing that they have is, they were the ones that told you what to do. They were the ones that gave you the guidance, and now they're relying on other people. So I think you just have to acknowledge that and give them that space and let them know that they still have most of the control.
Yeah. It's a very scary time for older adults, right? To have that big change. And I think about this being that part of that sandwich generation, right? Having a small child and an older adult. With our kids, they're always doing something new, right? It's always change, always scary. So they build that muscle. And then I've noticed as we get older, right, we don't change as much, right? Most adults, are pretty stable in their routines and what they do. And so they don't change. That idea of changing, even if it's moving from, the family residence to just a smaller place, right? Not assisted living or not something like that, but just downsizing. That right. Change is really scary.
And I think the largest part about that is you're 100% right, because it's not just taking them from an independent living to assisted living or to, memory care or skilled nursing. It's just that downsizing process where they don't need a 3-story house, because number one, they're probably not using most of it. And so they're maintaining it. And number two is, as we age, fall risks come into play. And if we can make it easier for them, and that's the whole key about it, is just making it easy for them versus stealing any independence.
Yeah. What are some of the tips you have on making it easy?
So number one, if there's any sort of friction, or if you are not near your parents, because many of us don't live near our parents, or we have, in my case, my parents are local, which is great, but my brother is in California. So for him, it's quite easy because he's not there. But I think the key about it is that is if you are not able to handle it by yourself, and if your parents can afford it, is to bring in outside help. And and if there is within your communications, if there is this discrepancy of, is it time for you to move to a smaller place, is to, there's elder psychologists that can help guide your parents and can guide you helping your parents through this transition. And so I recently did a blog post, and interestingly enough, I tagged Sandwich Generation. So you'll see that in the blog post. And so for anyone who doesn't really understand what that is, that we are these people that are dealing with it on both sides. And it's also a time, and I also relate to empty nesters, where people think, okay, kids are out, it's time for me to go do fun things. And all of a sudden, mom and dad have a question about their iPad, or the TV won't work properly, or anything like that. And it's a challenge for us because we're remote, and so much communication now is relying on these technologies where it didn't used to be like that. And so it's much more difficult for them. But bringing in somebody who can help them with these communication processes, help them with their phones, help them with their watch, make sure that fall detection is set on their watch if they're using a smartwatch. And there are resources that can help people with that. There's also things that, you guys probably know from like a legal perspective, doing a home inventory and like making sure that you have an idea of what your assets are and what things are in your home and what things. So doing a home inventory, and there's as simple as a piece of paper, or there is like a spreadsheet, or there is technologies like HomeZada that will do an inventory and give you an online resource to take pictures of everything and document it and say what goes to who, or, oh, I don't need this, do you want this, to the children or to another relative. But doing a home inventory really helps you with the move, as well as insurance, as well as who gets what when the time comes.
Yeah.
So those are just a couple different things.
I can think of a couple of PRs and estates we have that would have loved to have a home inventory.
I just wrote that down for a resource for our executors. Yeah.
So what about, I hear from a lot of people, oh, well, my kids don't want any of my stuff. Right.
Which is probably true.
It's probably true.
Sure. What is your advice for folks that, say that, oh, no one wants it, or my kids don't want it?
Yeah. So what I tell people, because, you always assume, your parents have china and like that kind of stuff that they got as wedding gifts and silver and that kind of stuff. And quite honestly, our generation doesn't want it. Like, some people have their own, and some people just don't want it. Like, the thought of polishing silver, you're like, okay, I'd rather use like the disposable stuff from a big box store, that looks like silver that I can just get rid of. So, not that we want to contribute to waste, it's just a different lifestyle nowadays. But there are things, there's like a organization called Max Sold. And what they'll do is they'll come in and they will go through everything, and they'll bundle groups of things. So whether it might be like artwork, inexpensive, not valuable stuff, and that's what I say to people is, it's not what you paid for something, and it's not what your sentimental value is to it, of the value. The cost or the value of it is what somebody else is willing to pay for it. So, for example, people are not willing to pay much for old china. And a lot of the china, if it's a classic pattern, is still being produced and you can still buy it new. So they're not willing to spend money to have it shipped to them and boxed up and all that kind of stuff. And so there's that part of it. And then if you have a unique collection, you can search online, or you can have someone search online for you and find that unique collection and list things on eBay or something similar to that. And people that are missing pieces will then pay a premium for it. But it really is, it's explaining to your parents that it might mean something of value to you, but it doesn't mean it to somebody else. And that's what somebody else is willing to pay for it.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. I was actually just cleaning this weekend my own stuff. And I was like, I have the last birthday card. My grandmother passed away last year, and I was like, oh, this is the last birthday card she sent me. But then I was like, take a picture of it. Like, the memories are what matters, right? It's not, nobody wants this
100%.
card. And so just even having that mentality, I think of, and I've heard that too, like, take a picture of something that's special to you. We can store it in the cloud. It doesn't take up any space now. But things like that.
Well, and the other thing, like exactly that thought, but if you're talking about your parents that are downsizing, or, you know, whether it's moving to a smaller place or whether it's moving into some sort of assisted facility, doing a digital picture frame, and they do a digital picture frame now that as long as they have Wi-Fi where they are, that you can upload from your phone pictures to their digital frame. Yeah. So they don't need to bring the 25 photo albums or the 65 frames that they're not going to have room for.
Mm-hmm.
You can do one and then have things rotate for them, that they have a digital picture, a digital slideshow that they don't have to maintain. They just need to make sure it's plugged in.
Small details.
Yeah. But that's usually the problem when people says to me it doesn't work. I was like, is it turned on? And they're like, I think so. And I was like, okay, well, try pressing the on button. They're like, okay, it's working now. I was like, okay, great. Yeah. But it happens. I mean, it's something that we grew up with that they didn't.
Yeah.
You know, if you in their generation, if you plugged it in, it was turned on.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. So
very true.
Yeah. But did that answer your question, Megan, about like the stuff that your kids don't want?
Yeah. So I think I'll share a funny story. I was visiting my mom and we're trying to now get rid of things. And I took some artwork that I had done that was on a very top shelf. It had a nice layer of dust on it. And I said, hey, Mom, let's clean this up, take a picture of it, and get rid of it. And she said, oh, no, you can't do that. I said, but technically it's mine. I made it. She goes, no, it's mine, and I'm enjoying it. Like,
Right.
I can tell you're really enjoying it from the layer of dust and where it was. But
with the layer of dust.
Yeah. I said, okay, well, we'll just put it back.
I'll throw it away as soon as I can and you're not looking.
Right.
Yeah.
But when it comes time to move. Yeah. Right. Well, my mom did that to me too. My grandmother did that to me. I was going through stuff at my mom's house, and this is years ago, but my grandmother was there, and she was like, I was like, okay, well, this can go. And she was like, no, it can't. And I was like, yeah, it can. And she's like, but I want it. I love that. That was something special. And I was like, okay, do you have room in a storage space where you live? Because I don't want it in my house.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, and sometimes, like, you know, when I tell people when they're going through stuff, whether they're going through stuff of their own or with their parents or whatever, or when I work with clients, you know, it's like we have okay, this is staying, this is going, this is, you know, or going out, whether it's donations or whether it's actual trash or it's going to somebody else. And then there's the maybe pile. And the maybe pile is what makes the process take so long. Because maybe is not a decision. I mean, it is, because it's really a no. It's staying. You're putting it in the maybe pile.
Yeah.
So decision.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, you know, I mean, I think that's one of those things that your mom would be like, oh, this goes in my maybe pile. And then you'd be like, okay, well, it's a yes or a no. And I think that's like the key with downsizing your parents is putting a realistic estimate on the amount of stuff that can actually fit in their new place.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I find that people don't realize when they're downsizing and they're moving into a new space is, especially as they age and they lose mobility and they don't allow themselves enough space to possibly need to get a walker through or a cane or, you know, some sort of wheelchair where they need more space in between things to be able to get to things. And also to consider like putting things on lower shelves and not so much on wheels because they grab onto it and they go flying away. Yeah. So I think those are the kind of the big keys about it is, and you'll notice when you go to apartments that are designed for seniors, they don't have anything up high.
Yeah.
And a lot of them will say to me, I wish it went higher. And I'm like, why? I'm like, you can't reach it higher. They're like, well, I would get on a stool. And I was like,
No.
it's not a good idea. It's not a very good idea at all. So.
Oh, that's kind of funny.
That's
Not really, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kim, what inspired you to focus on this aspect of your career?
So it actually came to me when I first started. I actually worked a lot. So prior to this, I worked in pharmaceutical sales. And one of the markets that I was assigned was people with arthritis and depression and all that kind of stuff. And one of the most powerful moments to me in one of my offices is I was waiting for a physician, and a patient walked by, and I was carrying a tote bag, and a tote bag had a brand label on it. And he said to me, your drug saved my life. And I was like, oh, are you taking XYZ? And he's like, no, I'm not. And he's like, my wife is taking the antidepressant that you sell. And her getting on the antidepressant saved my life because she was miserable, and therefore I was miserable. So, I was already in that market, and I got to see kind of like what that market looked like. And then it just kind of came to me. I actually was hired in by a woman and her husband. They were like in their mid to late 70s, and he needed long-term assisted care, and they had a long-term care plan. And if you guys know anything about long-term care insurance, a lot of times there's an elimination period. And a lot of times the long-term care companies are not real good at tracking how many days you are to the elimination date, where you actually get to get some money back for all the money you put into a long-term care plan. So I started helping them out with that. And then, he lived for quite some time after that, but when he passed away, I helped the family with both their estate attorney and their accountant and their financial planner, like relook at everything and make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed, because the wife wasn't a youngster. And so then I kind of like got more into it and more involved in that. And with a lot of my clients that are in this market, I have a direct relationship with the accountant, with the estate attorney, with the financial planner, because I track everything for them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like, let's just say, for example, I've had to tell someone, and I think it's so important, and it probably comes into play a lot with you guys, but I had to tell a family member when their mother was dying. I was like, you do know that you are the executor of the estate? And they were like, I am? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, why me? And I was like, I don't know the answer to that, but I think you might want to know, because there's some stuff that's
going to have to happen.
Yeah. Like your relationship is going to change quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, I think that that's so important, is that, people realize that they have this role, and they also know what their parents' wishes are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that's always been kept very quiet, especially like advanced directives and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Medical durable power of attorney and all that. Like, I think it's so important that people know that, so that they know what the wishes are of their parents, so that they're able to honor them. And I think that that parents who take care of that and share that communication with their children is the best gift that the parents can give their children, because then the children aren't faced with having to make those hard decisions.
Agree.
Yeah, those are the exact words that we use when we talk to older adults about, the gift of estate planning and pre-making those decisions for their kids.
Yeah.
Right. And then on letting the children know.
Yes.
Right. Well, yes. Communication is a good one.
Yeah. It's easier now because stuff can be stored in the cloud. But when people had like documents and everything, and there was disorder in terms of where documents were, and, you do this, and as you guys probably know, people don't revisit it as often as they might need to or should. And so it gets stored somewhere, and then people don't know where it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes this craziness. So, like I said, now with things in the cloud, it's a little bit easier, and letting people know. But I think that, and that's kind of how I came into it. I was like, well, here's this. And I did it for my own parents. My parents went away in 2021. Well, first of all, in 2020, when they were needing something to do. And I said to them, I said, call your estate attorney and go over everything. My brother had moved to California. His children were older than 18. I'm like, call your estate attorney, review everything, and go over it all. And then when they went away my parents went away the following year, I spent a week at their house and I went through every piece of paper.
Nice.
And yeah, like I could find certain documents, but then like I couldn't find the will.
Right.
And so sure enough, it was in some random place and I found it and I put it with the other documents, but it had been done by an attorney's office that had closed.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even like the record of it somewhere else. So, that's where like going through the documentation and having an assigned home for it and knowing where it is paramount to like helping the part that you guys help with of giving that gift to your children of doing it all.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into it, through helping other people and then taking that to my parents and saying, okay, I need to figure this out with you guys too.
Yeah. Sounds like a natural progression and a perfect fit for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's also, I've been doing this 21 years. And so the people that were, not much older than myself when I started with them that I've been working with all this time are now, close to 75, 80, years old. It's crazy when you've been doing it that long.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So we just have one more question for you. We ask everybody, what's one item you can't live without in your day-to-day life?
This is going to sound kind of boring, but it's my calendar. Like it's my guiding thing. I put everything on it. I know where I'm going. It's in the morning, quite silly. If you're into using AI devices in the morning, I can't say it because somebody will wake up over in the corner, but I say good morning and I have a whole routine set that it says good morning and it turns the light on the dimmest brightness in the bedroom and it tells me what the forecast is and it tells me my first 3 items of the day.
Nice.
So yes, and it doesn't matter, it's not like it's an alarm. I just give it the prompt, good morning, and it gives me all those things. And so at least that way, when I wake up and I'm like, oh, I forgot I was doing this, or, I kind of I know how to get dressed. I know what I'm getting dressed for. I mean, like I know the forecast and that kind of stuff. So, and it also prevents me from hitting snooze 17 times. And so,
yeah,
I would say it's my calendar.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. This was great. Really helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yep. And we'll drop Kim's information in the comments if you want to get a hold of her or shoot one of us an email and we would love to connect you.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.